Memphis track boy, let's go.
My Colorado swing. My Colorado swing. My Colorado swing.
Welcome into a new BuffStampede Radio. Adam Munsterteiger, the publisher of BuffStampede.com, coming to you a little earlier this week on a Saturday with football analyst William Gardner. Hope you're hanging in there, William. We've got some behind-the-scenes video to react to, some actual football to talk about. That's fun.
Yeah, it's a beautiful Saturday out after what's been a rainy, cloudy spring, early summer so far. So it's a nice day to talk about some football and dive into some CU stuff.
Yeah. Let's not bury the lead here. I mean, it's a big deal that Nikhil Webb-Walker is back with his football team. This is somebody that was undergoing chemotherapy, had lymphoma last fall, and has worked his way back into the mix with the Buffaloes. And, I think that's a guy that you saw him before he was sidelined, had to been going through some physical stuff, right? I mean, you don't just wake up one day and know you have cancer. Like, you probably have to go through some things to realize things are not working the way that they usually do. He still got in and got a quarterback pressure in a game last year, played on special teams in the first 5 games. So we look at Edge as one of those groups that maybe could have used another guy. With Webb-Walker being back in the mix, I think that's an important addition there.
Well, I think I'd like to start talking about it first without even referencing football and talk about what a blessing it is for this young man to have a second chance. I might get a little emotional here, but you don't get a lot of second chances in life. So, when you get one, you got to run with it, man. You got to take everything and just grab it by the horns and make the most out of it. Everything is in front of you now, and so I would say to him, just get out there and give everything you got, man. You already beat one of the biggest things you'll ever face in your life. So just have fun with it. And to me, it's not even about what he brings to the football team or the edge room, just that he brings himself back. And that's the story to me. And that Coach Prime and this team is built in such a way that they supported him and that he wanted to come back. So I think there's a lot about this for us to feel good about and feel proud about. And whatever else he brings to the table in that edge group, I think is gravy.
Yeah, it's a good point. That's a good way to put it. He's a good football player. He came over from New Mexico State, and he's not going to be a starter probably at Colorado at any point, but he's already been a motivational influence for this football team, and now he can be an impact guy on the field. I remember he came back for, I think it was the Oklahoma State game, and was part of Coach Prime's pregame speech, and he was around the team during the Alamo Bowl, and I think that helped, those guys to be able to see him come back and spend some time with them. So maybe the best news we've gotten this summer workout season so far, and it's like you said, it's not football related.
Well, I think it's a big wake-up call for guys that age. And, I was at CU and when Sal got cancer and actually worked with him the summer before on a work crew. Everybody didn't stay all summer back in those days, but it's a wake up call to guys that age, and especially athletes of that caliber that you tend to feel like you're untouchable and you're a warrior and you can take anything and you're not going to be the one that anything bad happens to. And then to have a friend who's just as big and strong as you are face a thing like that, I think it causes great concern to people of that age. And so I think it is good for all of them to have touched on something like that and to have it work out positively, is a bonus for the whole damn team and certainly for Nikhil and for him to have that team as a family. And I think it shows something about the program that Coach Prime has built, that it is a family to all those guys and they all do take care of each other. So, with his size, I mean, at 6'5", 275, assuming, I don't know the medical ins and outs of whether he's full go right now and can run or whatever. I don't really know anything about that, but he's certainly a guy that brings a lot to the table in terms of on the field ability. But I think I got to feel like he brings a whole new leadership sort of feeling to the game after having gone through a thing like that too.
One guy that does not need to ease back into things is Jordan Seaton. And the first practice back, Andrew Swayze said, "I can tell you've been in the lab." I still cannot get over his footwork for his size.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what makes him special. That's what makes him a 5-star guy and a future first-round pick in the NFL is his agility and the way his feet move and the way he's flexible and can move everything else. But what really stands out from that first week of summer conditioning is his leadership, and he ain't playing. You come in as a true freshman, you got to kind of have a little humility and learn the ropes and all that kind of stuff. But he came in there getting in people's faces and telling people, you're not going to quit, and this is the standard, and you're going to live up to it. So he looks good. He's leading, and a lot of leadership in football, comes from the ability to be a good player too. It's hard to be a leader if you're not a great player, and he's without question the best player on that team, and to have him, I've seen guys with his kind of ability. Alfred Williams was one who kind of would take time off and slack, and it's good to see Jordan Seaton come in there and just really be a vocal, in your face, but also supportive kind of leader, so that's good to see, and I think that's a good deal. And some of the other guys that sort of jumped out to me in there in all those videos and such, Carday Smith getting thick. Look good to see him looking all that, and some guys that need some conditioning, but they'll get it.
Yeah, I mean, they put him through the ringer this Thursday. I mean, they had buckets ready to go. There were some guys that were just not able to stand up, and in fact, one player that was on his back. I think that was kind of following Coach Swayze's message of like, don't come in here Monday through Thursday, work your tail off, and then have to hit reset on Monday. I think that's a good message to send these guys off into the weekend with, right?
Yeah, and I think if you watched, I watched several different videos on the different platforms and such, and one of the message there's clearly a couple of the times Coach Swayze is talking to all the new guys in the program about this is the standard and it's not going to lower for you. One guy, I wasn't clear. I don't know all the faces yet, but one of the big offensive linemen was saying something about, hey, I thought you were going to ease us into this. Coach Swayze said, the standard is the standard, man. Yeah. I'm trying to build you into champions, and it's going to be what it's going to be, and you're going to make it. Which is, I think is a good. And one of the other messages he had too was, like he had all those guys gather around, and he said, this is the standard, and this is what we're going to ask for, and if you don't do it, that's okay. Get on out. Put somebody else in. You won't play. And it's good that they have that reality right in front of them. But it was good to see all the teammates supporting and helping each other. But some of those big dudes got to get some running in.
Yeah, I'll tell you, it's nice to see Carter Stoutmeyer out there. He came in, and he's dealt with injuries in off seasons and just never really been having that full off season. Again, I guess it's 2 years. It's not a number of years, but to see him get back out there and his upper body strength, I mean, he might be a couple cheeseburgers away from being a linebacker someday.
It could be. Yeah, I don't know. And speaking of linebackers, the guy that repeatedly kept standing out to me was Kylan Salter. My God, that guy looks like an NFL right now. Jesus. I wish I had legs as big as his arms, but watching him work and watching him work out was impressive. And so hopefully the light, clearly coming from, he went to TCU first and then he's here. So it's clearly a P4 level athlete. Now needs to get the lights to come on the field in terms of linebacker play. But if appearance was anything, man, he'd be the first guy off the bus and the first guy out there on the field. But so there's a lot of good things. There's, saw a lot of Zane D'Souza out there working hard and sweating hard, and good to see he's up there. I swear to God, I saw Shane Cokes in one of those. Or it must be somebody who looks a hell of a lot like him or something. But it's interesting. It's hard to know how much to take, from summer workouts. And the only thing I could say, everybody thinks they're working hard. I think we've got a good staff and a good conditioning program. I like watching the coaches work with the guys, and I think the female coaches on the strength and conditioning staff add a whole new element to it that I kind of like the chemistry of it from watching it. But I don't know, Brandon Davis Swain started to look like a defensive tackle to me now. getting that thickness in there. So I don't know, a lot of different little things. I think when you look at all that, there was one point that stuck out to me, and I had written it down beforehand. Was Coach Swayze talking to him after all the running, and he was calling out somebody for owning up to a mistake or something. He said, "Look, you think I care about the conditioning? It's not about the conditioning. I'm looking for accountability," and that's really, all the drills they're doing out there. Yeah, it's all about getting quicker and faster and more agile, getting more in shape and all those kinds of things. But what it's really about is mental and emotional development, and finding out who can do it, who won't do it, who can't do it. And within yourself, it's like when I went through Marine Corps basic training 500 years ago, and I reached a point where I'm not gonna make it, man. Then I did, and then you find out something new about yourself. It's I don't have limits. All limits are self-imposed, and that's the point of coaching, is to try to get guys past those limits. And you're looking for who your leaders are going to be and who your warriors are going to be. And I think as an athlete, you start to figure out, you have more confidence in yourself. So you go into the fourth quarter and I can still do this. I can win this battle. So there's a lot of elements to all that go just beyond being in shape and being quicker and faster and all those kinds of things. And that's really the key to all that. You hear the coaches keep yelling at it. It's a mental game. It's in your head, So that's a big part of what that's all about. So I think they're doing that. Aside from that, it's another summer, and I don't know, some people get bent out of shape. It's if you say they're working hard, we always hear that every summer, blah, 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 whatever. Well, worked out for 9 wins last year. I think it'll get us there this year too.
Yeah, you didn't have the access to see what was happening before Coach Prime got to Boulder during these sessions, right? I would reach out to sources and I get information about guys standing out. But this is kind of a new level of things. It's funny how we get more information about some things, like being able to see summer workouts, but zero information about other things. It's just a different deal right now.
Well, and it's orchestrated, and they want to put out what they want to put out. But it's interesting that in these summer workouts, they don't shy away from, for example, showing Chauncey Gooden or Jaheim Otis struggling in the running, and puking and falling out, whatever. But then other things they don't want to share with. I don't know.
DeKalen Taylor, he's got a little muscle on that frame.
Yeah.
He's kind of a scat back, but Dylan Edwards was like that. He had muscle. That was never the issue with him. So he's definitely going to be able to, I think, handle some of the rigors, and they need him to stay healthy this year. It's great to see Samson Okunlola back in the mix, working out with the Buffs after missing spring ball. RJ Johnson got a kudos for stepping up as leader. Go ahead.
I think watching DeKalen Taylor's video from his college career up to this point, I think he's more than just a scat back. He clearly has the kind of agility and shakes and moves and north-south running, I think, that reminds me of Speedy Stewart. And I think he is more of a guy that could be more or less a Bill Calvin offense. And I think he's going to surprise a lot of people. His ability to shift, inside of a 5-yard box, I call it the old Oklahoma drill, if you know what I'm talking about. You'd have an offense, cones, and you had to run right through that, and some guys had to be able to shift the hips, whatever, and get through there. And he's one of those guys, and you look at him in the weight room and he's got some thickness to him. Not the biggest guy on the planet, but I think he's going to surprise a whole lot of people at that running back spot.
Long snapper Cam Hawkins is getting married this weekend, so congrats to him. William, any other thoughts with what you saw from the workouts before we get into some other topics like the house settlement? We're going to react to my summer offensive depth chart prediction story and a few other things. And anything else on your mind?
Well, I don't know. I mean, not like I said, it's workout. It's hard to take too much from it, but they're working hard, and we are going to be ginormously huge along the lines. We got some big guys at some of the athletic spots too. I think one of those wide receivers, I think it was, this looks like he's about 6'3", 6'4", they were doing a high jump up to about 6 feet high, it looked like to me, and he made that with ease. So we got some explosive athletic guys out there, and it looks like even with 9 wins last year, this roster in shorts looks better to me than it did a year ago.
And as Coach Swayze said, we got the talent. It's about all the other stuff coming together. And so we'll see if it does here in the coming weeks. Today's episode is brought to us by Macaulay Capital Fractional CFO Services. Is your business looking for financial guidance and support, but not yet big enough to hire a full-time CFO? Well, we have a solution for you. Hiring a fractional CFO who can work with your business on a part-time basis. You get the benefit of having a seasoned financial expert on your team without the commitment or expense of a full-time hire. And here's the best part. It's likely that a partnership with Macaulay Capital will be a win-win situation, meaning that your business will make more money from the guidance of a fractional CFO than the total cost of partnering with us. For more information or to set up a meeting, please visit MacaulayCapital.com. That's MCCAULEY Capital.com. William, everybody that listens to our podcast knows that we love the Hungry Toad. They've been bringing a taste of England to Boulder since 1991. At the Hungry Toad, they serve up hearty homemade fare from their scratch kitchen paired with a brilliant selection of British beers. They're the perfect spot for friends and family to gather, relax, and enjoy the warm, welcoming atmosphere. If you're mad for football, so are they. Whether it's the American gridiron or European footy, they proudly support CU football and CU women's soccer. The Hungry Toad, Boulder's local pub that's not on Pearl Street. Head to 2543 Broadway in Boulder.
And you know what? Hans Serrata don't take no whoopings either. He hands them out. How's that for a second?
I love it. I love it. William, your favorite thing to talk about is NIL, so I'm excited to kick this segment off with you. I say that sarcastically, of course, but we got to talk about this just for a little bit. Final approval for the House settlement was granted on Friday night, and now schools can share up to $20.5 million in revenue with their players annually, starting this upcoming academic year, which is July 1st. So not much time at all, less than a month. And that settlement also includes $2.8 billion in compensation to athletes who competed between 2016 and 2024. What kind of held this up a little bit was the roster limit deal. It's going to be at 105 going forward, but there is kind of this grandfathered clause where you don't have to cut all your walk-ons for this coming season. So I know that was a concern. One interesting thing in here, William, and I want to get your reaction to this, is with this House settlement, and they're saying that any deal over 600 outside of what the athletic department pays these guys is going to need approval based on the player's fair market value. And of course, the whole intent of this is to rein in what we've seen with the pay for play, with NIL. But you've also got this caveat in there, William, and this is the part that makes me think that this has got no teeth to it at all, is that publicly traded companies are exempt from fair market value oversight by the NIL clearinghouse. So that 600 number is only for companies that are not privately traded. So you got Oregon with Nike. I mean, that's not stopping any of that stuff. And I still feel like this was a good step in the right direction, but we're still so far away from anything. And then Rick George sends out an email saying that the NIL compensation for our athletes is going to be based on the revenue generated by the sports. How is that? And I'm sure other schools are doing the same thing. How is that not going to raise Title IX lawsuits across the board? Like, I just don't think this is ending anytime soon.
Well, nothing's ever ending, and I don't mind talking about this. I just think that the way people talk about it is silly and stupid. And I'll start by saying I don't have any feeling of sadness for any damned athlete out there talking about other guys making money off of me. That's the nature of capitalism, bro, man. Ford Motor Company and Boeing Aircraft Company, every single goddamn company out there is making millions for the guy at the top off the dude turning the wrench at the bottom. That's just reality. You want to cry about it because you're an athlete? Get the hell away from me. I don't care. The reality is, no matter what system you come up with, somebody's going to violate it, and somebody's not going to feel like it's fair. And so there are going to be lawsuits, and there's going to be cheaters, and there's going to be anything else, because we are human beings, and we're not, just leave it at that. We're human beings, and for the most part, people are going to find a way around things, or they're going to not feel that things are fair or whatever. So I don't get too worked up about it, man. The way people do, it's the only goddamn thing anybody will talk about on the board is all this NIL garbage. And I also don't believe, I think it's absolutely silly that people think it's all about the money where a guy goes to play his football, because that's just idiotic and stupid. Because for the most part, most places are offering, in the same neighborhood of whatever. But even in the NFL and even in the NBA, guys don't pick entirely based on who offers the most money. There's lots of things that go into what makes choices for human beings. Where do they want to play? Who do they want to play for? What kind of system are they going to play in? Are they going to be able to play there? All kinds of things go into it. So anybody that thinks it's all about who offers writes the biggest check, it's just wrong. Aside from that, I don't know. I still think that the NIL thing, if a guy could get a legitimate deal, being in a commercial for a auto dealer or something like that. Hey, everybody else has able to do that, right? So why shouldn't
that'll get approved by the NIL committee, but it can't be like a $2 million car advertisement, right? Like that's where the fair market value thing I think comes in, of like, okay, we're not letting you just completely exploit the system, is what they're hoping. Will that actually be done? I would be a little bit pessimistic about it, but we'll see.
Well, some people will get around it, and some places will get around it, and that's the way it goes. I don't know if anybody thinks they can figure out a perfect system that somebody can't exploit out there. Well, I'd like to see it if you could do it, but I don't know. I mean, I think there's got to be a wide range of, if I'm selling, Cadillacs or something, and you got to decide as an owner of a business, or the guy who runs a business, does this guy, if I put this guy on my ads, will it sell more cars? Is it worthwhile to give him a Maybach? Do I make enough off of that? I don't know.
That might be the wrong car brand to choose there.
I don't know. Well, I don't care. I'm just trying to think of something that has some value. I mean, like, how much do you give the Sanders family for being on the it's KFC, right? They do the KFC ads, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I like those ads, but I like KFC anyway, so I don't know what the value of it is. And some people are going to say, no matter, and you know what? I've been around this sport long enough and been around our board long enough to know that no matter what the rules are, no matter what happens, if a guy goes to the certain schools, like an SEC school, everybody's going to say it's cheating. If a guy goes to Oregon, everybody's going to say it's cheating. I don't know if it is or not,
So when you go to KFC, are you when you get the biscuit, do you put the honey on top, or are you a no honey on the biscuit guy?
Oh, it's got to. There used to be one out in California called Church's, and their biscuits came with honey in them.
Oh, that sounds great. Church's is still around. Yeah, I don't think there's as many locations as there used to be.
Well, there's not even any KFCs that I know of around me anymore, but I prefer Popeyes anyway.
Okay. You chicken sandwich guy there? What do you get when you go to Popeyes?
I just get 3 or 4 piece meal.
Okay. Well, good for you. Yeah.
They should put me on an NIL commercial or something.
We'll try to get Popeyes on board. They're pretty popular, though. Remember when that chicken sandwich came out and people were doing violent acts against each other to try to get those chicken sandwiches? Fortunately, that's dialed back a little bit here in the last few years. But let's get back to CU football. I think that with Colorado specifically, you want the more regulation as possible. And Rick George said, we don't have to allocate the 20 plus million out there, but we plan to do that. So they're trying to be in the ball game as far as that goes. That's a good thing to hear.
And given our coach and our staff and the advantages of Boulder and CU football, and if you want to be seen in a variety, both in an NIL sense and in an NFL sense, this place come right? If you want to be developed and all that sort of things. So we don't have to beat everybody out there in terms of what we offer every guy on the block. We got to be competitive. That's all, you know.
Yeah, it's funny because we do these NIL discussions, and it's not that I fully disagree with you. I semi disagree with you just in terms of the importance, because I've seen so many guys and heard so many stories about guys that would rather be at Colorado, but NIL dictates this. But you pointed out when A&M threw all that money out to beat Alabama in recruiting rankings, and what did that end up providing? Not a whole lot. Definitely not the return on the investment. And really in general with NIL, you haven't seen a lot of that. You've got some programs like Alabama that, Texas and Ohio State that print their own money. But they're only taking a handful of transfers with those big NIL monies. They're still trying to cultivate a culture within their program.
I know, but I just said it. I just said it has to be competitive for the most part. But what you just said is one of the exceptions to the rule. I mean, Alabama, Ohio State. There's a handful of them that are going to be different. Oregon's got a sugar daddy, but we don't have to compete with all those sons of bitches every time. And the dude that took the money to go to Alabama, is it going to be a long-term good decision for him? Well, that remains to be seen. He got to make his own choices.
But don't you want there to be a level playing field? Don't you want 20.5 to be, a good compensation for these players, that to the point where with everything else that they get free, the education, the tutoring, the gear, everything else. Like, don't you feel like at that point, like, if you could just even out the playing field, it would make all this moot. But there are definitely, legal things that are kind of in the way of that.
Well, let's throw out the education garbage, because nobody thinks the education's worth a damn anymore. Let's just be honest.
They're idiots, though. They're idiots if they think that.
Well, that's what people think, that getting an education at a university doesn't have any damn value. That's what the whole basis of this goddamn conversation is about, man. Playing field. If you're talking about this 20.5 million, but as I said, there's always going to be some son of a bitch that breaks the rules, man. There will always be some son of a bitch that breaks the rules. Okay.
Well, at least you had a chance of catching them in that, and not to say that, especially on the basketball side, not to say that the penalties ever completely matched what some of these shady programs were doing. You've got the whole TV contract with CBS and the NCAA tournament. That is a whole other thing. That contract basically states if certain programs are not allowed to compete in the tournament, we can renegotiate this contract. So the basketball side was kind of handcuffed with that stuff. The football side, you saw some stuff over the years where programs would get in trouble, at least, for doing stuff that was against the rules.
The basketball thing, unless you, in terms of our basketball situation, unless you acknowledge that Tad Boyle's the greatest coach that ever lived, you get ridiculed and mocked, and you're not allowed to have that conversation.
I don't think that's the case, but yeah.
Absolutely the case. I've been run out of that room so many times. Those, what? We probably just gone. All I get stick with football, dumbass.
I mean, you're welcome to have your opinion. I just don't think you should.
But okay, we need to just move on, because this is a good topic, and the sons of bitches that are in those discussions, you all know who they are. They know what they say, and they anyway.
So how's Dan Lanning doing this week, you think?
I don't want to go there either, man.
All right, let's move along. Let's get back to some actual CU football talk. And I did my early summer offensive depth chart predictions this past week. And William, I had to admit on our message board that, with offensive line outside of left tackle and maybe center and receiver, I mean, it's really difficult to do that right now. But I tried my best. And let me just go position by position. You tell me if you disagree with any of these. That work?
Yeah, I think every one of these positions is kind of up for grabs, except for tight end, because there's nobody yet. Only two dudes, but every single one of them it seems like, except for one or two positions. So really, only left tackle is the only thing that I can be sure of at this point. But let's go through it.
So quarterback Caden Salter was number 1 on my list. Julian Lewis, number 2, and Ryan Staub, 3rd. How close do you think 1 and 2 is at this point?
I don't think we know. I think they ran a couple of. I think they were running kind of different schemes for Julian Lewis and Caden Salter in spring. It seemed like to me, and they got to figure out what they want to do. And I would think it's fairly certain to me that Caden Salter is going to be the starter in the first game. And I don't know. Then you got to show it. You know, it's like every other time we've had a sure thing going into game one, and he's not starting in game two or game three. You know, so I think Caden Salter is probably the guy. I think he brings the most to the table in terms of the various things that he can do. I think that Julian Lewis is going to be really good at some point. I'm not sure if he'll be ready in game one. I think Ryan Staub's a guy that I would be perfectly comfortable with running out onto the field if anybody got hurt or we needed anybody to finish out a game or whatever. And quite frankly, I think Staub's still better than people think he is. So we're kind of thin at that spot with only three guys, but we'll keep our fingers crossed. And I think we start out with Caden Salter and we get Julian Lewis some playing time when we can and see how he develops.
Yeah, we keep getting like there's one hater about Ryan Staub hater out there. What's that all about? Have you been following that?
No, there's always, you know, I don't know, there's always a guy that somebody doesn't like, you know, and it always seems to be like the underdog or it's like if we talk about a guy, you know, we're talking about a depth chart. There's only three dudes on it that got her on scholarship. I mean, you know, it doesn't seem too crazy to talk about all three of them, but what are you going to do? It's like, look, if we came on here and said, everybody call in, we'll give you $500, somebody be on there going, that's it, only $500. Why don't you give us 1,000, man? You guys suck. You know.
All right, running back. Yeah, go ahead. Did you have anything to close out there with quarterback?
No. I was just saying I seem to be in a mood today or something. I don't know.
Well, I'm not bringing NIL up again. We're
what you did is you, instead of saying the guy's name, you should have said the beluga whale.
Okay. I'll remember that for next time.
Like, what do you think about the beluga whale? Well, you know, okay. All right, moving on.
Running back. I had number 1, Dallin Hayden. Number 2, DeKalen Taylor. Number 3, Michael Welch. And number 4, Charlie Offerdahl. What would your top 4 look like?
Well, I think that you know, as Nippy's 13 on the board said, and as you've said before, I think Cameron Michael might be in that running too. But I really got to kind of feel like, based on what I've seen in actual college game action, I think DeKalen Taylor's the guy to beat. But you know, I wasn't in those practices. I had, you know, on some level, we have to take the word for the coach that Dallin Hayden is a change kind of a guy. It's hard to say, run against your own defense. If he is, I mean, it's a big if to me. If he is, that would be something special. Taylor's actually shown something at the college level. Welch is coming on; he's shown some things too. But he gets hurt a little bit. But I don't know. I think DeKalen Taylor is going to be the guy that ends up starting the first game. You know, and then funny that, you know, from 2 years ago, Charlie starts the first game that year, and then it's going to be fourth string now. So we've improved it. I've just, like a lot of people, thought we'd bring in more guys, but I think, you know, with Michael and Draylon Miller, we've got some other guys. Maybe Isaiah Harge even could get in there and get some carries if we were in trouble. Yeah,
I think with Cam Michael, like, for sure, Wildcat packages, right? We saw them actually do that with Isaiah Harge. I think it was like 4 times last year. And on at least 2, maybe 3 of them, there was some procedural penalty in front of him. And the one that he actually got to run, he did a good job on and got a first down. So I think Cam Michael, when you watch his high school film, was just, he's so well suited to get the snap and be able to kind of read where the holes are with his speed. If he gets to that next level, forget about it. I am anxious to see how that all plays out. Apparently, Neely was hinting on DNVR. I didn't get a chance to see it, partly because I don't want like their takes to influence my own. But somebody put on our message board that Neely was saying that there might be another running back joining the mix, so we'll see there as well.
And I think you bring in great athletes. You know, it's like back in 1990. You know, Eric Bieniemy got suspended for the first game against Tennessee, and they just moved Mike Pritchard from wide receiver, and he ran for 200 yards. You know, you get great athletes on your team, and you put them in places where you need them, and they're going to do great things. That's what they do. You know.
Yeah. Get a physical receiver that runs downhill, and that's a position that those guys can excel at. Receiver, this was tough, really tough.
Well, there's so many.
Yeah, I had Omarion Miller and Sincere Brown as my top receivers, Hakeem Williams and Joseph William as my second, Terrell Timmons Jr. and Cam Michael as my third. I mean, Joseph Williams could have easily been interchanged into that top group. I could even see Brown and Williams, and then Miller being the guy that is kind of next in line there. What is your thoughts in terms of who you see really excelling out wide at receiver?
Well, I don't think it matters necessarily who the top three are, or even who the second three are, because they're gonna run a lot of guys through those positions, and you got a lot of talent and a lot of guys that want to see playing time. So there's a lot of things you can do here. I mean, even last year, you know, clearly we had our top three receivers, but then a lot of other guys made a lot of big plays as the season went on, you know, and made key catches and what have you. So there's almost no way you can go. You almost can blindly pick any three of them, and you're going to be okay. You know, to put out on you could if you want to go four, you can blindly pick any four of those four, and you should be pretty potent against most defenses we'll see. So it's hard for me to say. Omarion Miller, to me, based on what he's done in the past, I don't know. It'd be kind of fun if we went with Omarion and Draylon Miller, and then we'd call our offense Miller time.
I like it. Yeah, Draylon Miller was my top slot receiver, and he's gonna spend time playing all over the place, and that's what makes these depth chart predictions difficult, because Draylon Miller is not this one thing you just put into a box. He's going to play some running back, out slot. He's going to play outside. But for the feature here, I put Draylon Miller number one, Isaiah Harge two at slot receiver, Jack Estera comes back as a transfer at number three, and then the freshman Quanell Farrakhan Jr. and Quentin Gibson fourth and fifth at slot receiver. I wrote in there, I don't know how you redshirt Farrakhan and Gibson because they're so good. I also don't know how you peg him in for a lot of playing time. Yeah.
Because that's funny. I was just thinking, all these talk, and we haven't even mentioned those two who in other years would certainly be near the top two. But then, you know, you look at like Sincere Brown and Hakeem Williams. If they come close to reaching their full potential, my God, you know, they could be NFL draft picks too. So there's just a lot of possibility, a lot of question marks out there. But there's just so much talent in that group. I think, I think Joseph Williams in spring really kind of took over that role. Who was our big, tall wide receiver last year?
Will Shepard?
Will Shepard kind of filled that Will Shepard role, making the big catches in the corners and things like that. So he showed some things this spring. There's just a lot of talent in that wide receiver room, and I think it's going to remain the strength of this offense.
Tight end's one of those positions like running back and linebacker. It'd be nice to have one more guy in there. A little thin. I went with Savell Smalls number one, Zach Atkins the transfer number two, and Corbin Lazier the freshman at number three. And Zane DeSouza, who you mentioned earlier, has made his way to campus, is the only other scholarship tight end on the roster. It's one of those things that, you know, you can live without it. You can go 10 personnel. You get in short yardage situations, and you move one of these offensive linemen out to be a jumbo tight end. You can survive that way. It just doesn't feel like this position is going to lend them to be as much 11, 12 as the average CU fan would want, I feel like.
Well, I think if Savell Smalls and Zach Atkins stay healthy, that you will get a lot of good things from both of those guys. You know, Savell Smalls was a premier athlete, not as tall as Zach Atkins, but I think he has really come along and showed a lot this spring. Atkins showed some things this spring, and so I think both of them could be a huge impact in both the run game and the passing game. I feel like we saw quite a bit of walk on Brady Kopitz in the spring, and did a few things that were worth looking at. I just don't have a lot of faith that Corbin Lazier is going to be ready, or that Zane D'Souza got a lot to prove to me to prove he can even play at this level. And missing that early semester can hurt him. But we'll see what they do in the summertime and see if they make themselves part of the equation. Depending on how much other guys develop in that tight end room is going to say a whole lot about how they can use them. And then, the value of the tight end really comes down to the formations and the plays that Shermer calls. So I think Savell Smalls did a much better job than people think last year of getting first down catches for us in a variety of games. I think he's improving his blocking and people gave him a lot, well, he wasn't a good blocker. Well, what the hell? He was an outside linebacker his whole career up until last fall. Was he supposed to just pick that up like it's automatic? So I think he'll be better. And Adkins comes from a lower level, but I think he's a guy that will give us something at that position, both in size and pass receiving ability that is a little more than we've had so far. So we'll see. I don't know. Again, everything about this offense to me still comes back to Shermer.
Yeah. And that's something that really, until we get into the proof is in the pudding days, it's hard to really know what to expect there, right?
Yeah. Well, and it's all speculation at this point, as the last 2 years, because he had to go along with Shador. I don't know. We'll see. I guess we'll see when it comes out.
All right, left tackle Jordan Seaton, no surprise there. I had number 2 Andre Roy Jr. at that position. Number 3 Walker Anderson, the transfer from UCLA. At right tackle, this was controversial on our message board. I went Mana Taimani first at right tackle, Philip Houston second, Larry Johnson third. A lot of people, there's a lot of growing sentiment that Larry Johnson the third should be the favorite there, and I could see that. I think you're splitting hairs. You're really not knowing where this is going to play out, but I wouldn't sleep on Taimani. I think the way some CU fans are, or even Philip Houston to that extent.
Well, this is again, and I've been watching this for 30 years for CU football. Our fan base, and particularly our board, decides a guy sucks, and he will never change their minds, no matter what he does. And sometimes they decide that just based on what he did before or anything else. And I watched this game too long not to know that any guy in any given season can be an entirely different guy than he was the year before, because sometimes the light comes on and they do it. I didn't see anything from Mana Taimani in the spring that caused me super concern. I didn't see anything that caused me to think he's going to be all conference either. But I think that what I saw from Philip Houston towards the end of last year before he got hurt was pretty damn good. And just the way he looks now, and is bigger and thicker and looking good, I think Philip Houston's still the guy to beat for me. Larry Johnson's got some playing time at right tackle at this level. Roy's got some playing time at this level. We brought in a lot of damn guys who played some football, and it's going to be interesting to see who kind of washes out into the top 5 in those spots. I still think it's funny, we haven't talked about the guards yet, but I think that those 3 guys are probably the 3 front runners for that right tackle spot at this point. Roy might get some looks there. I don't know.
Yeah.
Carday Smith looks fantastic right now in those in shorts and shirts. I mean, he has really filled in that frame, and he looks 6'5", 6'6" now, so he could be a wild card too.
At guard, I went with Xavier Hill, number 1 at left guard, Kareem Harden, a returning player, number 2, Cooper Lovelace, number 3. Kind of could have gone either way with those 2 guys, 2 or 3 at left guard. At right guard, I went with Zy Chrysler, who's coming off a strong spring with the Buffs. Ake Ogunbiyi at number 2 at right guard, definitely looks the part in Tyler Brown, number 3. Love Tyler Brown. It would be a great story if he comes on and has a great season. It was tough, some of the positions he was put in last year, but it seems like you might have recruited over him.
Well, and I think that those 2 guard spots are as much of a toss-up as anything on the team, because you just got, there's all these guys we brought in Chrysler and Hill and Lovelace and Johnson and Roy. I mean, every single one of them could factor at one of those guard spots. They're all significantly bigger than Tyler Brown. I don't think Tyler Brown and Kareem Harden, who played a lot of football for us the last 2 years, are going to see the field this year because they just have brought in such massive, guys with enough experience. I still want to see Ogunbiyi healthy and play just from watching him walk through the weight room. God damn, and Zy Chrysler, he's looking, he's out there. I don't know. Zy Chrysler's one of those Alabama linemen that go to the combine, take the shirt off, and they run with their boots flapping and everything else. And Zy Chrysler looks like that in the conditioning drills. And when he does them, he finishes. He's not bending over the barrel puking. He's like, so. I think I don't know. I might have to say Chrysler and Hill are the two favorites in my book, but they brought in some guys that are a lot better than I think most people think, and so I think we're going to play some guys at guard that could be pretty damn good.
At center, I went with Jarian McGill, the transfer from Louisiana Tech, number 1. Yaya Tia, number 2, and then Cooper Lovelace, number 3. He was kind of an emergency option at center at Northwestern last year. So,
Yeah.
You're looking at this offensive line group, and then I'll get your take on center too here, William. I really, really feel like this is by far the best offensive line group that we've covered in a very long time. If they can get consistent production out of right tackle, if Larry Johnson the third could be the guy, I think that would be the best case scenario for that group. So I don't disagree with Colorado fans from that, but it's that right tackle spot in center beyond Zarian at this point that has me a little concerned. But I feel like guard, you've got a lot of these guys that we talked about at tackle. They can move inside, and I think guard they're going to be really good this season.
Well, I think Cooper Lovelace is a guy that people are overlooking too. I mean, the guy started 9 games in the Big Ten last year and did pretty well, so he's seen guys, he had to play against Michigan. He had to play against Ohio State. He's consistently seen guys that are as good or better than what he'll see in the Big 12. So he's another guy that could play all of those 3 inside positions and play it well, so there's just a lot of different options and opportunities for guys here. Zarian McGill, I think, at 6'2", 310 is bigger than anybody we've had at center in a long time. I think Yaya Tia is ready to go. His work ethic and leadership out there in this first week is impressive to me. And I think he's a lot better. He's another one. People will not give him credit because he didn't have 4 or 5 stars next to his name. Well, you know what? Sometimes that's not the be all and end all of what it ends up turning out to be. So I don't know, and again, it comes back to those 3 coaches, can they get the job done and get the right guys in the right spots, teach them the right reads and techniques and everything else, because it's so important. Coaching is probably more important at the offensive line spot than any other place on the field because, they're the worst athletes on the field. So the technique is everything. And they all have to work together. So the schemes and the blocking schemes and everything else and the calls and everything else has to be right. So to me, those 3 offensive line coaches have to do a good job too to put these guys together. I'm not as concerned too much about the chemistry aspect as some people because they're out there developing that chemistry right now, running and puking.
Yeah, that's a big part of summer strength and conditioning program is going to war with these guys and being able to build that chemistry. Coach Swayze brought the music back and he's like, as long as y'all keep the main thing, we can listen to music. But I liked his point about you can't let that define you. If you don't have the jam going, the song that you want that's really going to motivate you, you can't let that get in your way of what you're trying to accomplish.
The only thing I would take out of that first week is that I think Chauncey Gooden needs some work to be ready this year, and it's mostly conditioning work. I think in terms of playing, he's got to run off some of that weight. But I think he's going to be. I'm just as high on him as I ever was, but I do think he's put his work in this summer to get into the mix especially with the just the sheer number and size of the dudes ahead of him this year.
Yeah. With recruiting, Colorado is hosting 2 official visitors this weekend. Hopefully you're a subscriber to BuffStampede.com. We're running a 60% off promo right now. We've been charting this receiver Jordan Clay and offensive lineman Ben Gula on campus this weekend. And we've been tracking all these visitors all spring, all summer, and we'll continue to do that as we go through the summer in the fall. Any takeaways from those guys? Did you get an opportunity to watch Gula's tape at all?
Yeah, a little bit. I think he is an interesting prospect. I think somebody mentioned on the board today that maybe they got some insight on him from somebody down in Florida. But he's certainly big and he moves pretty well. I don't know. We got so many guys on the hook at offensive line right now. It's hard to know who to be excited about. Because some of the guys we're looking at are really top prospects and highly recruited. Gula to me is an interesting guy. He's got some interest from a lot of teams at the highest level. Indiana, Maryland, A&M, UCF have offered, and so a lot of other teams are looking at him. I just sort of feel like with I think we got roughly somewhere around 30 offers out to offensive linemen, and quite frankly, any 4 of them would work for me. I mean, they're just really going after some quality offensive linemen out there, so it's fun to have Gula here. Like that he's 6'5" and got the wingspan and got the height and everything else. I think that Jordan Clay is a pretty exciting looking receiver. So that's 2 guys, and they're continuing to recruit at a pretty high level. And I think as long as you keep bringing in quality guys, soon we're starting to fill up the pipeline with high school guys, and there there's been some debate about we should have had more high school guys, and like the playoff teams that were most successful were built from the ground up with high school guys, right? Well, big damn deal. They all had
you can't. That's apples to oranges comparison.
Well, they all had
Colorado's been.
They all had top 10 teams for the last 10 years, right? So none of those teams had to take over from Sleepy Carl and rebuild a whole damn roster. So that's kind of meaningless and pointless, we'll get there. But it's exciting to see it back on a level. I don't know. I was saying, getting spoiled already, seeing the likes of Carday Smith and Chauncey Gooden and Jordan Seaton and Johnny Jones and guys like that. And I'm like, Ben Gula, okay, nice looking prospect,
Yeah, they've definitely risen their recruiting, and it's human nature to whether you're an analyst covering this like myself or just a fan that like you get used to it pretty quick, right? And then it's like if you don't have those stars, you mentioned Atia and Gula, like, but you still get you if you care about it that much, take the next step. Watch their film, figure out a little bit more about them, because there often is a reason, why this staff in particular is looking at these guys.
Well, and it's like, I keep seeing people saying that they got concerns about Yaya Atia because he wasn't highly recruited. Damn. All I got to do is watch his.
I mean, he was in England of all places. It's kind of hard to get recruited over there.
Right. It's like we've seen guys. You played down in Douglas County at one of those Douglas County high schools, right? Along the Front Range down in southern Denver. Everybody comes here to see you. Everybody comes here to see you. And if you don't have the offers, it's because nobody thinks you're good enough. Okay. Now you're a guy playing in London. Ain't nobody going to London looking for a bunch of offensive linemen, So if you get missed over there, it makes sense. If you get missed in the Denver area, you don't get missed in the Denver area. People just don't think you can play at this level. That's all. But then you look at Yaya Atia's film and you just watch him in his first year and now going into the spring and summer of his first. I guess I can't remember when he got here, but all you got to do is watch him out there, and this guy's prospect. My God, just watching him out there, his leadership, his size, he's got. There was one point in one of those runs where he's yelling at the coach, blow the damn whistle, because he wants to go, man. And I'm like, that's the dude I want. right
Yeah.
there. And people don't see all those little things, that go into being a great offensive lineman. I think that kid's going to be fantastic. It may not be this year, but he's got a hell of a future.
CU extended an offer to a 2026 Louisiana quarterback prospect, Cole Bergeron. He threw in front of Pat Shermer and Boulder this last week. Again, there's a full story on Bergeron on BuffStampede.com. He got a chance to spend that night on Pearl Street and seems pretty interested. And Colorado's got, a quarterback from Hawaii coming out on an official visit in June. So, especially with Salter being a senior, you'd love to lock up a quality quarterback from the high school ranks here in the coming weeks. But you gotta be pretty selective too, because if you need to, you could hit the portal again. But with Julian, I think if Julian's not the starter this year, I think you want to provide the runway, whether that's him getting in for a series every game or what it is, well, however that looks, kind of providing this runway for him to take off in 2026 if he's not the guy.
Well, I think that you need to be bringing in that quarterback in every class, and I think we'll try to look for one in the portal every year too. Seeing as how we only I don't know what'll happen if Brian Staub will stick around, but with Juju Lewis, we're going to need a couple more guys. At some point, you got to have 4 or 5 guys in that room competing with each other, and so I think that that whether it's this guy or somebody else, you got to be right, which is not always as easy as it seems. But I don't know. We'll see who we end up as our quarterback recruit this year. But they're clearly going after guys, and I don't know. Outside the quarterback position, the guy that kind of is exciting to me is big offensive tackle from Florida, Clayton Lee, the redheaded kid.
Yeah, you like him?
Well, I mean, God, 6'7", 315, and he's standing there, with the wingspan like I think the guy could touch both the sides of the stadium, for God's sakes. And you just look at a guy that size, and like, holy crap, man! I was trying to envision him in 2 years after he'd been with Swayze for 2 years, standing there like that,
Well, he's a 2027 guy. Did you say that? He's actually going into his junior year of high school, which is crazy.
Yeah, which is like, holy crap,
Yeah.
What do they feed these guys? But I don't know. I just think that there's a lot of exciting things going on in the recruiting and whatever, and some of the guys are bringing in, and hopefully we'll start seeing those commits and the excitement of all that as well. And so, should be fun times.
Yeah. Well, next week, let's get into our defensive depth chart predictions, and then we got to hop into the top 40 Buffs countdown. Have you put any thought into that? I think I'm going to put my list together this week. And then I think it's just going to be you and I voting this year, because we're going to go back and forth. I think it'd be fun if we do it that way. We've had Brian do it in the past, but if you want me to invite him, I can. I don't know.
Yeah, well, yeah. See, it's always fun with more people if they want to get involved.
Okay.
But I may have to wait till Friday or this weekend to get into it, because I got a trial this week. But
okay.
Beyond number one, I don't know what the hell to do.
It's going to be splitting hairs with a lot of guys. Yeah, and it's going to make for fun discussion, though, right? Just in terms of kind of.
Well, if we don't have the same name at number one, I'm gonna slap you in the mouth.
I already said last week. Didn't I say it was? Yeah, I don't want to say the name because we haven't got there yet. But
right, yeah.
I mean, go back to the beginning of this podcast when we talked about him. It's really not that big of a surprise. Come on.
And this time, nobody can say it's just because I play favorites for offensive linemen. Not to give it away. Could be.
Yeah. Have we ever had an offensive line? Tim Lynott, did he ever get first on the list?
He was. I don't think we had anybody really good enough to be considered that. But
yeah, even Nate Solder, he was an All-American, but he really came on his senior year.
I think as we talk about this, number 2 just came clear in my head, but I'll keep that to myself.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Good. Well, this was fun. I wasn't really trying to debate you on the NIL stuff. I just, I'm tired of it too. I'm tired of it too, man. But in this gig, you got to keep up with this crap, unfortunately.
I don't know. I just think I have a different view. I never was trying to say that it's not important or that, but I think that at the end of the day, we don't, if we're thinking we're going to compete with Alabama and Oregon, just get over it and move on.
Right now, given the
Those-
system, yeah.
Right. So, we just need to compete with the Big 12 and then, enough and then compete enough above that level to be credible when we get into the playoffs,
Mhm.
Well, I don't know. It doesn't all have to be equal, and there's always going to be teams, I don't know, back to the book 1984, all animals are equal, but some are more equal than others, right? So that's just the way it is, and there's never going to be any way around the fact that some of these places are just going to get around the rules. But I don't know. I don't know. People call me naive or stupid or whatever. I wouldn't be the first one to say either one, but I just think I think the NIL is important, but I also think that other things are important to guys too, and sometimes the NIL is more important to this guy and less important to that guy. I don't know.
And I always go back, William. This is, I think, in line with some of your philosophy is that you still always have playing time as a currency, no matter what you are, even as a group of five program right now in this new era of these programs can only start 11 guys at a time or put 11 guys on the field at a time. And so, you want the money grab,
Yeah.
but you're going to weed those kids out pretty quick if they're not in it for the right reasons. And anybody that wakes up loving football, they want to let their talents showcase themselves.
Yeah.
And so they're not going to just sit on the bench for their entire college career.
Well, and you also, if you're thinking smart, you want to go someplace where you will get developed and showcased and whatever. I mean, there's 11 guys on the field, and there's only 60 plays on either side of the ball in any given game, right? So there's only so many guys can play at the same place. Now, granted, all these guys tend to think they're going to be the one that wins out and be the
Right.
guy, but I don't know. Was it a wise move for the linebacker to go to Alabama? I don't know. He got to make that decision himself. In the end, will he play enough ball there and be good enough there to enhance his NFL career? I don't know. Remains to be seen. But I think a lot of these things are still, these are the kind of questions that kids have to ask themselves now. And I think too often they don't ask these kinds of questions. I guess at the age of 60, I look back and think, man, I made a lot of dumb mistakes back in my teens and early and mid 20s. Hell, the dumbest mistake I ever made was getting out of the Navy at 28 and going to law school. I was at 28 for God's sakes. So I don't know. Just looks different from this end of the lifespan, I suppose.
Well, one interesting thing that has been coming out now as we've gotten further into this NIL era is that the percentage of guys getting drafted that don't transfer is way higher than the guys that bounce around. And so
Really?
if that trend continues, I think that's another thing when you're negotiating with a kid that maybe has another $100,000 offered to him from another school of like, okay, well, let's sit back, take a breath, think about, what the trends are in college football, and leaving does not benefit you in terms of the next level based on what we've seen in recent years.
Yeah, well, I think those are the kinds of things where, at the beginning of any new system, you don't have enough data and information to know how it'll play out.
Yeah.
But then again, every guy thinks, well, I'm going to be the guy that bucks that trend. So,
Yeah. I just want CU specifically to try to just limit attrition in the spring if there's going to be two windows again next year, because there's not a whole lot out there to bring in, so you're just kind of treading water almost in the spring now, it seems.
Yeah. And I think one thing about Coach Prime is that he learns things, man. He every time he goes through something, he learns the benefits and the downsides and whatever. And so I think every year he gets a little bit better at things, and so all this is brand new territory for everybody. I think he's probably handled it as well as any coach out there with fewer advantages built into his system versus say an Ohio State or Oregon or an Alabama. And so you got to figure that looking forward, they're going to take that more into account. And you still wonder, it's like every guy that left they didn't all leave against our will.
No, the majority did not. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, in terms of like a lot of them seeing the writing on the wall, right? In terms of that, I'm not going to play here.
Right. And so I think he's still looking to fill the roster with the kind of guys he wants, and that's and we're only 2 years into this thing, coming from a dead roster. I mean, literally, almost a dead roster of guys that could play at this level. So it's still a work in process. I mean, you look at the guy, even the guys that are still around who played on the offensive line the last 2 years are kind of deep in the mix now, So I just see improvement every year. The defensive line looks better. Now there's certain positions we got to shore up, and linebackers one of them, running back, and I think it's probably too late for this year, but I think that Coach Prime will learn that you've got to get that done in the first window next time.
William, always fun to catch up with you. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, okay?
I will do that, sir. You too.
I definitely will, and I appreciate everybody out there for tuning in.